Okay, so now we've thought about an independent and dependent variable being connected by a causal relationship, but we need to think also about the direction of that relationship. That's another important part of a theory. And the direction of a relationship is described as being either positive or negative. So let me just go back to the broken windows theory over here, our basic model from Figure 2.3 in the book. So we identified disorder as the independent variable and crime as the dependent variable. Now, in these kind of path diagrams, the ovals are the variables, right? And the arrow is the relationship. Now, notice though this arrow has a head on it that flows from disorder to crime, so that indicates the causal flow of influence from disorder to crime. So that's a that's the most basic model. But notice there's a plus sign here, right? So that indicates the direction of the relationship. It's not just a relationship. It's a relationship with a particular direction to it. Now it's positive. Now positive does not mean good. Okay. So one confusing thing for many people when they approach for the first time thinking about positive and negative relationships is they think of the common use of those terms to refer to a good thing and a bad thing. So disorder is not a good thing, and crime is not a good thing. We don't want more crime and more disorder. So positive in this sense is not a positive relationship, as in something we value or want. It means something else. It means that high levels of disorder are associated with high levels of crime. So high disorder is associated with high levels of crime, and low disorder is associated with low levels of crime. If the two variables vary together in that way, it's described as a positive relationship. So let me go back here. So that's a positive relationship. High values of x tend to occur with high values of y. Or in other words, x and y vary in the same direction. So what's a negative relationship? A negative relationship is, again, it's not doesn't mean a bad thing. There are many very useful negative relationships. It just means that high values of x tend to occur with low values of y. So x and y vary in the opposite direction. It's the opposite pattern. So let me show you a diagram from the book that explains that. This is Figure 2.4. So on the left-hand side is our positive relationship, which we talked about. Low levels of disorder. By the way, this is an XY, a stylized version of an XY scatter plot where the horizontal dimension is x and the vertical dimension is y. That's a typical way of showing the relationship between two variables, is to plot them on a graph like this with an xy graph where x is the independent variable and y is a dependent variable. X is horizontal, y is vertical. And if we do that, we see we can situate, let's say, a neighborhood or a city with low levels of disorder, and it would be expected to have low levels of crime. So low disorder and low crime go together down here, and correspondingly high levels of disorder and high levels of a crime go together up here. And that if we do that, and particularly if we have many observations that follow this pattern, we would see a positive relationship, an upward sloping line like this. And by the way, when we get to the more statistical part of this this course, the upward sloping line is associated with a positive correlation coefficient or a positive slope in a regression analysis. And regression analysis is a way to represent this line statistically, but a positive slope essentially means what it looks like. It's an upward sloping slope, and that's hence the name positive relationship, because the slope is positive, a positive number. Now, here's the negative relationship. So what variable might be negatively related to crime? Well, one example is income. If we think of a city with low income, low income city, we might expect higher rates of crime in a low income city. So low income, may be associated with high levels of crime, and correspondingly, a high income city may be associated with lower levels of crime. So low income, high crime, high income, low crime. If that's the pattern, then we would get this kind of scatter plot, and the line would be downward sloping, or the slope would be negative. In other words, the slope runs downhill, and that's a negative relationship. Now, it doesn't mean a bad thing, doesn't mean a good thing. Positive doesn't mean good. Negative doesn't mean bad. It means positive means the two variables travel in the same direction. Negative means the two variables travel in opposite direction. They vary in opposite directions. Okay, so let's practice these ideas with a few simple examples. So I want you to take a look at these. I'm gonna just pause and let you think about each one, and then I'll identify them as being positive or negative. So the first is age and health. The second is education and earnings, which we looked at. The third is class size and test scores. And the fourth is air pollution and asthma. So identify whether you think each one is positive or negative, and then I'll give you the answers. Okay. Okay. So here it is. Okay, age and health. Age and health is negatively that's a negative relationship. So older people are less healthy, younger people are more healthy. So high values of age go with low levels of health, and in other words, high values of age, meaning older people, are associated with lower levels of health. On the other hand, low levels of age, meaning younger people, that's associated with higher levels of health. So the two variables travel in opposite direction, making it a negative relationship. Okay. Education and earnings. Now that's a positive relationship because higher levels of education lead to higher earnings, and in turn lower levels of education lead to lower earnings. So both variables travel together. They covary in the same direction, and that means the relationship is positive. Okay. Class size and test scores. Now that's a negative relationship. Larger classes lead to lower test scores. On the other hand, smaller classes lead to higher test scores. So large class, low test scores; small class, high test scores. That's a negative pattern, right? A negative relationship. And finally, air pollution and asthma. That's a positive relationship. More air pollution leads to more asthma, or conversely, less air pollution leads to less asthma. Now, it's a positive relationship. It's not a good thing, right? Air pollution and asthma are both problems, but the statistical relationship is positive in that sense. So that's just a little practice with positive and negative relationships. But if you're unclear about this, review it in the book, and it's very important to kind of be confident about this, because when you begin to interpret evidence and particularly statistical results that show relationships between variables, it's important to be clear about what a positive and negative relationship mean. Okay, the final idea we're going to talk about here is the unit of analysis. Now, the theories that we've looked at are composed of variables and relationships, but we need to ask the question: what do the variables describe? What things did the variables describe? Variables are characteristics or attributes like age or income or disorder or crime, but attributes of what? What things do the variables describe? And those things are referred to as the unit of analysis, and they can be different things for the same theory. So let me just back up and define unit of analysis. So unit of analysis is the object or things described by the variables in a model. And it turns out that the same theory can be tested with different units of analysis. By the way, the unit of analysis is very much related to the kind of data or empirical evidence you're going to use to test the theory. So sometimes data is available for different units of analysis. It's also called the level of analysis. The unit is also called the level of analysis. So possible units of analysis for a theory of crime. We looked at the broken windows theory of disorder and crime. We could test that theory at different levels. We could test it at small blocks or block groups. So blocks can be high or low in disorder, or blocks can have more or less crime. We might want to expand that to neighborhoods composed of several blocks. So neighborhoods can have more or less disorder, and neighborhoods can have more or less crime. There are larger districts we could collect data on. Districts could have more or less disorder, more or less crime. Even whole cities can be measured in terms of their crime and their disorder, and even countries. So the unit of analysis is, in this case, is different geographic levels. But it can also be, in other kinds of studies, the unit of analysis could be an individual person, it could be a household, it could be an organization, a school, a classroom. It'll begin to make more sense later when we actually begin working with data, but it's important here because the theories we're talking about describe the behavior or the characteristics of something, and we need at this point to at least have in mind what it is that these theories describe. So that's the notion of a unit of analysis. And I should just mention, in longitudinal research, the unit of analysis includes the time period. So in longitudinal data and longitudinal studies, days or months or quarters or years could be the unit of analysis as well.